I'm Amanda, and this is Not Your Granny's Quilt Show. Welcome to today's episode. I have Amanda Loewen of Prairie Quilt Co. She is a teacher, like I used to be. She's a mom, and she is a newer pattern designer. So I just, if you haven't seen her stuff, it's just so magical. Her use of color are just stunning. So go check her out if you haven't while you're listening to this episode, and let's get to know Amanda. Hello, all my quilty loves out there. Thank you so much for being here. I just want to remind you to go grab your merch at nygqs.printify.me. You can pick up all your merch wants and needs. There's sweatshirts, hoodies, t-shirts, tote bags, mugs, stickers, anything you can think of. So if you don't see something you love, I do take into consideration listener suggestions, and I will be running a poll soon to see what else we might want in the merch shop. So head on over to nygqs.printify, that's printify.me. The link is down below, so go check it out and get your swag today. Also, a little reminder that if you're on Apple Podcasts, if you could head over there and leave a 5-star review, I would love that so much. When we hit 50 5-star reviews, we're going to be doing a humongous giveaway, and I am going to be creating a quilt that I will donate to charity for that gracious love that you're showing. So go ahead and head over there if you haven't already. Leave a 5-star review, and as soon as we hit 50, it's go time, people. And now let's get into the episode. Welcome to the show, Amanda. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm so good. Thanks for asking. I'm so excited to have you here, and it's so fun to have another Amanda around because there's not a lot of us, but we do pop up out of the woodwork every once in a while.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
So, yeah. Um, well, yeah, I'm just so excited to have you here. But before we get into all your lovely quilt patterns and talk about those, let's go back and talk about how you got into quilting.
Sure. Well, I guess like if I go way back, like I've always been a crafty kind of girl, right from a kid, which I think is very common for quilters.
Mhm.
So yeah, as a kid, I did lots of cross stitch. My mom worked at a craft, like a tea and craft shop. So I actually even sold my cross stitch creations like at her shop where she worked. So I was kind of getting into this craft business right from like junior high age. And
Fun.
then later on, I learned to knit, and I had an Etsy shop selling knitting
Wow.
for quite a few years while I was going kind of in my 20s when I was going through university, and it
Mhm.
just was something I was doing for fun. And I never did a lot of sewing until I was pregnant with my first child. Um, my first child, he's 9 now.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
when I was pregnant, I kind of thought, oh, maybe I want to like, yeah, I kind of had that nesting feeling, and I wanted to see if I could dust off my sewing machine and make some baby blankets and things. So I went to our local quilt store in town, and I really fell in love with the fabric. They had the original cotton and steel
Oh,
lines
oh yeah.
right then, so I like purchased like all this like cotton and steel prints, and I sewed up baby blankets with it and stuff, and I just was kind of hooked from that point on. I think just from the fabric capturing my imagination. And like I didn't start with making quilts, it was more just sewing with the fabric. But
Mhm.
then on a whim one day when I went into that quilt shop, I picked up a charm pack,
Mhm.
and then I was like, oh, but what do I do with this? Like I kind of like just spontaneously bought it on an impulse, but then I was like, oh, but I want to do something with it. So I was kind of researching, well, what can I make with a charm pack? And then I came across Moda had a free charm pack pattern, which I
Yeah.
can't remember what it's called, like the Moda Love quilt or
Oh,
something.
mhm.
So that was my first pieced quilt that I ever made,
Wow.
with this charm pack, and I actually still have it hanging, like, in this room that I'm in right now. It's
Yeah.
on the wall.
Oh.
I hung it up and in our, like, play area for my
Mhm.
kids, and, it's always a nice reminder to see that first quilt because it
Yeah.
was lots of half square triangles,
Mhm.
which I think I had to watch a YouTube video to learn how to do it. I didn't know anything about quilting,
Yeah.
but I didn't trim any of them. So
Oh, naturally.
I made them and then I sewed them into the quilt, so, like, nothing is lining up and
Mhm.
it's all really wonky, but I still have it hanging up there because I've come so far from that first quilt that I made. But, like, that was my first child. I actually didn't really get into quilting until I was on my maternity leave with my second child.
Okay.
Um, when I was on that leave, then, I think I just really felt like I needed something else.
Mhm.
I was just always at home with like a 2-year-old and a baby, and I just was feeling like I wasn't myself anymore, and I just didn't know what to do. And so I kind of thought, well, maybe I just need to really learn something new.
Mm.
And that's when I really started throwing myself into learning more about quilting. Um, with so I had made that one Moda charm pack quilt, but then I started choosing all these other different projects as skill builders.
Mhm.
So every new project that I would make, a lot of them were mini quilts, but they would teach me something new.
Mm.
And I learned everything through YouTube and a lot of reading of Susie Quilt's blog.
Yeah.
She had an amazing blog, she still does.
Yeah.
Very helpful tutorials, and I just did one thing at a time and and just kept going, and I was hooked, like I never stopped after that point with quilting. And my daughter, that was when she was a baby, and now she's 7. So, like, I would say I really, really got thrown into quilting when, yeah, I would say about 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it
Wow.
was kind of
That's a
so I
journey.
just started with making quilts. Yeah,
Yeah.
never had this idea that I would one day start writing patterns or doing
Mhm.
anything that I'm doing now, but it was just something for me at the beginning as kind of a self-care kind of thing.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible, and it's like, I hear more and more, it's like people find quilting in a moment where they need an outlet, they need something to channel the feelings they've got going on, and making something beautiful from those feelings feels so
Mhm.
good. It's like, "Oh, okay, like, I'm sad, but I made this gorgeous thing," or "I'm
Yeah.
feeling lost and I made this beautiful piece of art that gets to be functional for my home or my family," and so I can just imagine that that's, a relief from some of that feeling.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because I definitely felt like I needed that time, like, for myself.
Yeah.
And for me, like, it's always been doing something creative. Like I've
Mhm.
always been into the fiber arts, whatever it is, like cross stitch, knitting,
Yeah.
sewing. So yeah, just moving on into quilting, it had actually always been something on my radar that I had been interested in. I had, on my Pinterest boards, I had saved all these quilt ideas for
Mm.
years, like the 1 hour quilt and stuff. I remember that was really popular. And
Yeah.
and I even tried it out, but it took me much longer than 1 hour. I
Don't
could
they
probably
all?
do it now in 1 hour, but
Sure.
the
Right.
first time, I think it took me, like, a whole weekend to do the 1 hour quilt.
Yeah.
Um, but but yeah, so, like, for me, that was just, yeah, absolutely something I could focus on. That was something other than toddlers and babies.
Yeah.
And also, like, I was quite bored because
Mm.
like I'm a teacher by
Mm.
trade and working full time regularly. So I just found, like, when I was at home, like, I'm in Canada, so we got
Mm.
a whole year maternity leave. And that was a very long time to be at home by yourself with your kids when you're used to, like, every day going to work and it being really busy. So it just was a really hard I'm actually a really hard time
Yeah.
for me. So, like, I really needed something that I could focus on, something I could learn, something
Mhm.
new to do, and that's kinda where that all came about.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
incredible, and yeah, as a former teacher, I know, like, when you're at school, it is so busy and there's always something to do and there's always somebody demanding your time or your attention. And I kind of, when I came out of it and started working with my mom, it was like, I was kind of the same way. Like, yeah, we're busy and we have a lot of quilts to make and things to do, but it's nothing, nothing like teaching. So I can just imagine even getting home and having only two kids to attend to. You're like, what else do I do with my
I
time?
know. I mean, it is a 2-year-old and a baby, but still.
But still, you're used to having your
Yeah,
attention
just
directed in
everything.
50
It's
different directions.
completely different. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, I'm glad you found quilting because I mean, I don't know how long I've followed you, but I know it's been at least a couple of years that since I found your Instagram and I just love your use of color and your designs are just so beautiful and so it's just very eye-catching to see what you've created and
Well, thank you so
inspiring.
much.
Yeah, of
Yeah, I
course.
actually created my Instagram account. Oh, goodness. So when I first started quilting, I would post my creations like on my personal Instagram page. They always had the lowest number of likes and engagement from my friends and family. So I figured, oh, okay, well, I had signed up to do this quilt along, my very first quilt along with Then Came June.
Mm, mhm.
And I feel like that was, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago. Like I had only been quilting for maybe a year when I signed up for this quilt along. And then you needed to like share posts in the quilt
Mhm.
along. And I didn't want to make my personal account public. So I
Yeah.
created a new like public account just to show basically to share in this quilt along.
Yeah.
And then I just started sharing all my quilting in this new account. It wasn't called Prairie Quilt Co. Then I had a different name for it when I first started, but
Mhm.
that's kind of where the account first started. And um, yeah, it's really grown since then. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
It's
kind of the whole
incredible.
reason is just to join a quilt along. So
Right? Well, it paid off because you've got a lot of followers, and I'm sure you're inspiring so many people out there. It's incredible. So you, if I'm correct, you put out your first pattern, the Starry Night Table Runner, about almost 2 years ago, or
yeah, it is just about the second anniversary now. So in Oh boy. Well, 2020
Mhm,
was a year that kind of changed everybody's lives quite a lot.
mhm,
So I went from, teaching at school to like remote teaching from home. So I was at home for like about 6 months straight.
mhm.
And during that time, I actually started pattern testing for some designers. And I did quite a lot of it. I think I did about a year straight of pattern testing without breaks.
Wow.
But I loved it. I enjoyed like a meeting
Mhm.
for the pattern designers and kind of getting in the behind the scenes look of the creation of a pattern.
Yeah.
And I just kind of thought like, oh, I'm really interested in doing like writing my own patterns too. I had some ideas and for me, I didn't really know, like I knew how I could make it myself, but how do you actually like create like a clear pattern with diagrams and things for
Right.
people to purchase that?
Yeah.
So um I had wanted to take a pattern writing course like in 2020, but then we all went back to school that
Mm.
fall and I just really wasn't sure how school was going what school was going to be like that
Yeah.
fall, with first coming back after everybody being at home. So I'm like, I can't like add this extra like learning how to be a pattern designer on my plate right now. So I deferred it to 2021. So I took a class then through Quilters Candy.
Mhm.
And like right after that class is when I released that Starry Night table runner pattern. So
Mhm.
that came out in 2021, like right before Christmas.
Okay.
So that's about 2 years ago right now. So that pattern is always free, a
Mm.
free download on my you can get it through my Instagram links.
Mhm.
But yeah, lots of people have downloaded it already. And
Yeah.
it's a really nice little pattern that you can use. I have actually a couple of different ones in different colors, and I'm a big home decor person. I love decorating my house. So like I
Me
have
too.
different table runners for every season and I'm
Yeah,
yeah.
me too. Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way. I love just like throwing little table runners together because it's such an easy way to kind of just change the feel of your space. And
Mm.
I love that. But, and it's so cool that you kept it free. I mean, what a sweet thing to do for your followers and people who are interested
Yeah,
in your stuff to try out your patterns. And table runners are just kind of a fun way to try something and
for sure. Yeah.
ease into quilting if you're new. And because it's small, it's not a commitment to a giant, you know, blanket essentially.
I
I
know. Yeah.
A
Yeah. I
quilt
think
is
like
not a
that's why
blanket.
when I was first learning, like I did lots of mini quilts when I
Mhm,
was first learning how to quilt because that was for me just way more manageable to learn all the steps. And I
yeah,
didn't try my first throw size quilt until I had probably already been, I don't know, made at least 4 or 5 mini quilts.
mhm,
Then I thought, okay, maybe now I can do like a bigger quilt.
yeah. Yeah, there's, like, so many easy ways to get into quilting without making a huge quilt on your first try.
Yeah, like
There's
kudos to people who do, because people like buy my patterns and
Mhm.
they message me and they show me their quilt. They're like, this is the first one I ever made. I'm like, wow, good
You're
for
like,
you.
"Cool." Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah. I mean, as a person who started out, I was like, "Go big or go home." I made a twin size, uh yellow brick road pattern quilt for my very first quilt, very first time ever really like sewing anything beyond like, the 4 or 3 seams to make like a little bag or, just super, super basic stuff. I was just like,
Mhm.
I'm making something huge that I'm going to use all the time, or I'm not making anything. And my friends were like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my first throw quilt that I made was a kit that I bought from Craftsy because that
Hmm.
used to be like a big website with lots of different like classes
Yeah.
and things. So yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think it exists anymore, but
I don't think so either.
yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, and yeah, I love smaller projects now. I can appreciate them more now because sometimes you just need to make something, and committing to a whole quilt can seem overwhelming sometimes, but the fact that there's just like cute smaller projects out there, the patterns, like yours is free so people can get into it without making a huge commitment and just make something. And I love that. And I love experiences where you can try on someone's pattern writing style, because not every pattern writer is going to flow with the way your brain thinks. And so it's fun when you can find designers whose thought process follows with yours because it makes it
Mhm.
so much easier to make the quilt. So
Yeah, for sure.
those little opportunities, I think they're so meaningful because it lets people try it on without.
Yeah, and that's why like there's so many different like free sampler quilts projects or collaborations and things that I
Mhm,
throughout the whole year. And that's a great way to get some free patterns, practice different skills, and
mhm.
try out different designers' writing styles. So
Yeah,
like those things are great to sign up for.
yeah. And
Yeah,
have
I
you
just
done Oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh yeah, like I just finished being part of one
Okay.
through the month of October. So it was those are just like also from the designer's perspective, it's great for collaborating with other people. And I also get to try out sewing their patterns too, because we test each other's things. And like
Yeah.
at this point, like I don't sew other people's patterns that often anymore either. So
Mhm.
it's a nice opportunity for us designers as well to kind of, oh yeah, this is how other people are doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you probably get kinda stuck in your own little world of designing because you have your process and how you do it versus,
Mhm.
like, what other people's process might be, and so I'm sure just, like, getting out of that sometimes is maybe refreshing and maybe helps you with your process even better, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, because the way like I work is different than the way somebody else works. And it's just, yeah, like you said, it's very refreshing to just have that, you know, new lens on, oh yeah, this is how other people do it. And it's like, okay, well, this person, they're all about curves. And like, I'm not a curves person, but it's a good stretch for me to do that every now and then. It's like, oh yeah,
Right.
I can sew curves if I really try.
Yeah. Like, oh, there are other methods out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think even as a teacher, like my school is big on, professional development was like if you had opportunities for professional development, they wanted you to take them. They wanted you to visit other teachers' classrooms within the school. So if you worked it out with another teacher to go see their, math lesson or whatever, they would find somebody or admin would come in and sit in your class during that half hour or whatever. So you could go see other teachers teach. And as kind of like when they were requiring it of us, like we had to fill out these forms and whatever, it was annoying because we were like, oh, we don't have time for this. But when it became more of just like an option or an opportunity versus a requirement, we still did it, but it was with different intention. And I think just because we wanted to instead of we had to, but being able to like get out of your own zone, your own space and go see someone else's and how they've done it, it like just inspired me to continue like growing my practices as a teacher and like maybe fine tune a couple of things here and there, not like, oh, I'm going to be exactly like that person, but just kind of give me a new perspective on how things could be done. Cause I think, especially for me, I was teaching third grade for 8 years. And so I was like teaching and saying and doing the same thing every year. And things changed because we had inquiry as our focus. And so we would do everything through units of inquiry but it was still like the same core content, right? So you're just like saying and doing the same thing over and over again. So it was really nice to get out and go see other people. So I can imagine like doing that in the quilty world is very similar where it's kind of lets you go, "Oh, I didn't even think about how that could be done differently," or I didn't even see how maybe, not that you've had this experience, but just like maybe how something you were doing might be clarified so that it's easier or better for your, the people making your patterns or whatever. But like that's just like the thing that popped in my head is it's probably, just nice and maybe gets your wheels spinning.
Yeah,
Just
I totally agree. Because yeah, I think yeah, if you're just in your own classroom or in your
mhm,
own little, box,
mhm,
you're kind of just used to your own ways and yeah. So just being able to get out there and seeing what other people are doing, yeah, is just very inspiring, I find. Like you always find some kind of takeaway, right?
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully. Like that's the goal, right?
Mm.
And working with other people is so fun and just getting to see what they come up with in their own creativity. It's like creativity begets creativity. So it's like the more ideas you create, the more there are to be had. So it's almost like it's like there's not an bottom to the well of creativity. It's like being around others who are also creative is like to me so inspiring because it's like, okay, I can make more stuff. I can do more things and it just makes ideas flow more, I think, when you're in the space with more creative people and seeing how they do things and yeah, anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So your latest release, because you've got like what, 9 or 10 patterns out now?
Yeah, probably something like that. I was just working on I have one pattern coming out now before Christmas, and I
Mm,
think I put number 11 on that one.
okay.
So, yeah,
Okay.
some of them are full throw quilts, some of them are just block patterns. But yeah, I've got quite a few at this point.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you got the one coming out and this I don't know how people feel about like continuity of like timelines, but I don't know. This will be coming out in January, but so you will have had a new pattern coming out at Christmas
Yes.
time. That's awesome. And but your most recent one was Bear Camp. Is that true? Am I
Yep,
wrong?
that's
Okay.
right. Yeah, that one came out September 1st.
Okay.
So that was my last one that I released.
Okay.
Um, that was a really fun pattern. I've never made a pattern like that one before. It was basically just one big block,
Hmm.
and you could make the quilt in about 4 hours, start to
Oh
finish.
wow.
Like it was a really fast make. Um, it was so fast that I know like people always love to do sew-alongs, and
Mhm.
typically a sew-along would be, 5 or 6 weeks, as you like make all the blocks and put it all
Yeah,
together. But I was like, it does not make sense to have like a 5-week sew-along for a quilt you can make in 4 hours. So
right.
I thought, well, and it's also that was like back to school time for me. So like I knew I
Mhm.
would be really busy with other things. So I didn't like a quilt along is a lot of it's quite involved for me, like on my
Mhm.
end, to keep up with the weekly emails and tutorials and that kind
Yeah,
of thing. So I thought, oh, I'm just going to do like a weekend challenge sew along,
yeah,
get it all done in one weekend. So that's what we
yeah,
did with that one. And yeah, it was really fun. It's no problem to make that quilt in a weekend. So
yeah.
we had a lot of people joining in and we did lots of Instagram lives rather than emails, which was so
Mhm.
much easier for me.
Nice. Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
cool, and it's so cute. It's like, again, another simple, like, simple quilt, simple project to make, but again, it's like a cool way to make something quick and easy that lets
Mm.
people experience your pattern writing, and it's a big bear paw, right?
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of people really like it, to make, like, as a gift, like a
Mhm,
because it's a pretty easy and fast one to make if you wanna gift somebody a quilt, so it's
mhm.
been I think a lot of people have been doing that, like, now leading up into the holidays, and
Yeah,
mhm,
yeah, yeah, I love that, and as a person who makes quilts all the time, like, those patterns are just so nice to, especially if, like, I want to gift someone, having more patterns like that is just so nice because it's like I don't have the time to make someone something that takes weeks and weeks to put together, but knowing that on a weekend at home when I'm not working, I could throw something together that's so pretty and such a nice gift, like, it's just yes, I love seeing that because it's like, "Oh, thank you," like, it lets me still do what
yeah.
I wanna do without feeling like that pressure to put a million hours into something that somebody might go, "Oh my gosh, what a nice blanket, thanks." And I'm like, "Ah,
It's not a blanket.
first of all, it's not a blanket. Second of all, be more grateful." No.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I know, I think a lot of people don't realize the amount of hours that go into making a quilt.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's
Yeah.
nice to have those little fast makes for those times.
Mhm. And you're like, you don't feel as stressed giving it to somebody because 'cause you're like, "Okay, I did not spend 100 hours on this."
Right.
It's still a cute quilt, it's still something fun, and you can personalize it for whoever you're giving it to, which is great, and then you can just give it away, and
Yep, we can feel good about it.
yep, exactly. No, I love that. So, okay, so then your new one coming out, have you, like, released a name or anything? Can we talk about it at all right now?
Uh,
I know this will be coming out
yeah,
after it's out, but
yeah, I've already, released the name of the quilt. It's gonna be called Wintry. And it
Okay.
is like a sister pattern to birdling. So I had
Okay.
a quilt called Birdling come out in the spring, and it had two different color versions to it. So Wintry is also going to have the same two different color versions to
Okay.
it. Um, but it is a snowflake inspired quilt. So you can see
Mm.
it. So yeah,
Okay.
so I thought, like, rather than it doing, like, a Christmas quilt, I'm in Canada, we have winter about 6 months of the year. So I thought I
Yeah.
was gonna do something more winter inspired, um, and so I have the snowflake that I was inspired by, and, like,
Yeah.
I love color, so my winter quilt is very colorful.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like, "Oh, the blocks behind you is, like, pink and purple and teal," and
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
love
one of
it.
my favorites.
Yeah. Well, and that's fun too because if, like, you want I mean, here in Idaho, it's winter 6 months of the year too, so, I mean, I feel you. We're not as north, but we're still pretty far north, and,
Yeah,
um so yeah, I like whenever it's like time to take Christmas down, I'm like, okay, but it's still winter and I still want decorations. Like I'm not ready to pull out all the spring stuff yet. because you still want to be cozy and you still want that feeling of winter.
Mm,
So I love that, you've got such a versatile pattern that you can make it more work it into your color palette of your home and still be wintry looking and not be Christmas because that's a hard,
exactly. I mean, you could make it in Christmas colors if you like, but
yeah,
you don't have to.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. You can stick with kind of the blues and teals and make it more snowflakeish without being too Christmassy at all. And that's really cool. Or yeah, go crazy, make it Christmas and make a few of them, who knows?
Yep.
Fun. Well, that's going to be
Mhm.
cool. And does
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
sorry.
Oh,
I,
I was just gonna say I'm releasing it the first day of winter, so like that's why I'm releasing it right before Christmas because I thought that would be a fitting day to send this one out into the world.
yeah, that's a good day. Then solstice can have a quilt.
Mhm. Mhm.
How fun. Um, oh, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, I know. I was gonna ask you if it comes in just one size or are there multiple sizes or is it just about how many blocks you make?
Well, it's going to be just like birdling, so it's going to have 4 different sizes
Okay.
that it comes in. So it'll either be crib, small throw, large throw, or bed.
Okay.
So, but always the amount of blocks that you make kind of determines how large it's going to be. So you don't have to go by what the pattern says, but the instructions and the fabric requirements and cutting are all for 4 different sizes.
That's awesome. It's like I understand that it can be challenging, especially if it's like not a block-based pattern to create different sizes, but
Yeah.
I think it's easy to think like, oh, it's just a block-based pattern. I could just make whatever size I want. But you're right, like the fabric work requirements, the cutting, it's like all those things that are already figured out for you. It's like, why reinvent the wheel
Mhm.
when someone's
Yeah.
already done the work for you?
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know?
there's lots of math involved.
Mhm.
If you love math, you can easily, hack patterns to what you need it to be, which I
Absolutely.
often did, before I wrote my own patterns, because I'm a very mathy person.
Yeah.
I just understood it and I knew how to change patterns to what I wanted them to be, but I know
Nice.
not everybody can do that. So
Yeah.
they need that in the pattern for them to follow. So
Yeah. Yeah. It is nice. And I mean, I think too, if you work with enough patterns or you make enough custom kind of things, it starts to become more natural to the thought process of like, oh, I can change this, or I don't have to be scared of the math of it. But if you're not in that kind of boat of making your own quilts or like design kind of working or tweaking designs for people's wants and needs, then it can be a little daunting to see all that and go, you know what? I'm going to just make it as is. Which
yeah.
is great because that's what the pattern writers do, right? It's like you're putting things out there for people to make and hopefully they don't, run off with it and try to make it something that it's not, but it's
But
just
sometimes when people do that, like
mhm,
it's incredible.
mm,
Like I've seen some hacks of some of my different patterns, like um, cabin nights,
mhm.
especially. Like some people have made it extra scrappy or have done
Oh,
like really cool ombre things with the way they laid out their fabrics. And I was like, oh, that's just so incredible. So I love it too when people like just take your idea and then they kind of yeah, tweak it or make it their own. And
yeah.
it's really fun to see what people do with it. Even just the other day, I saw somebody had made the bear camp quilt, but they wanted their quilt to be bigger. And that
Mhm,
one only comes in one size because it's one large block.
right.
Um, but they added an extra row of HSTs around
Oh,
outside of it, and it looked so good. It's like, wow, that's such a great idea.
yeah, just kind of border it out, but keep the
Yeah,
theme of like that kind of look.
yeah, it just looked really good
Oh,
with that second layer around it. So
yeah,
always check the hashtags, before you start making a quilt because, you
yeah.
know, Instagram doesn't show you things the way they used to with hashtags, but they'll
Mhm,
still show you like the top posts or the most recent posts. So like
mhm,
I know before I started designing my own patterns, if I knew I was going to make a certain pattern, like I always went to the hashtag first to see what other people had made and what um, colors or fabrics people had used, just for
Mhm.
inspiration. Like I just found
Yeah.
it that's always a great idea to check the hashtag.
Yeah. Absolutely. I do that too because I'm like, I want to see other people's ideas because again, that whole concept of like seeing other people's creativity can spark yours. And so it's like I might have an initial thought, but think, oh, well, I don't know if that's like enough or if I want that exactly. But seeing other people's choices is kind of like, oh wait, I could actually replace this one, this color, or this fabric with this one, and like move things around to kind of change how the overall quilt looks too, which is kind of fun seeing people's choices and how it impacts the pattern and what it looks like at the end. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like the internet is such a wonderland of so much information and inspiration and ideas. And I mean, it obviously can backfire sometimes, but mostly, it's just a wealth of ideas and inspiration. So
Yeah,
it's,
absolutely. Like I've kind of I used to do a lot of Pinterest. Like
mhm,
I think when Pinterest first came out, and then I kind of went away from it for quite a few years. And then actually when I started pattern designing, I've come back to it
mm,
now. Um, so I will regularly go onto Pinterest and just kind of browse and just save ideas for inspiration. Like I've got
mm,
just a whole board of just color inspiration, and it's
mm,
just lots of just pictures of color that inspires me. And I
mhm,
like, yeah, I just love it. So, and it's different than Instagram. Instagram is always just new stuff, and
mhm.
Pinterest is, it's always it's there. It may not be new, but it's just inspiring ideas. So
Yeah,
yeah, I just have found like, yeah, that is such a great resource to have and
yeah,
to look at every now and then.
yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of the same way. I was on Pinterest constantly and it was like always striving for the Pinterest classroom and now it's Instagram classroom. It's like or, I found tons of crochet patterns on there that I've tried and loved and made over and over again and yeah, tons of quilty and color inspiration and it's so fun to see it kind of people reviving it and coming back to it and saying like, "No, come check this out. It's still here and it's still cool." And because there's just a wealth of inspiration on there and there's things that are have been there for a while, but they're still good and they're still inspiring people. So it's like,
Yeah,
no, go pull those and find that. And it's
yeah.
fun to
Even
see. Like I know Emily Dennis of Quilty Love, she does some stuff on Pinterest, like sewing
she
courses
does.
and
I have actually taken her Pinterest course.
okay.
I can't remember what it's called. Pin it to win it, maybe? I'm not
Okay.
sure. That might not be right. But I did take her course, but um yeah, like I find for me Pinterest hasn't really been a great I don't think I'm doing it often enough
Mm-hmm.
to make it like a big like supporter of my quilt business.
Sure.
I yeah, like I'm teaching all day. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have time to be pinning things all day long to Pinterest, but I do love using it myself like for
Mhm.
inspiration. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I know. I think it's so funny because like I think sometimes we forget that we do other things besides quilting and or people don't really realize that like maybe you are a pattern designer and you've got this really successful quilting business, but that you also have a day job. And so it's kind of funny to think like, oh, well, yeah, I'm all about this thing, but I also have to put my focus elsewhere most of the time. And
Mhm.
it's kind of an interesting balance to find. And I mean, I know I was juggling all of it when I was teaching too, just like doing what I could to help my mom out because she was running things mostly by herself. But any breaks I had or any time off I had, I would be over there helping her out and always running the socials. And it was like the more I spent working on those things and trying to build the business, the more I was like, why am I in this classroom right now? which I know isn't the
Yeah.
case for everybody. Like, not everybody wants to run away from their day job. They like having both, but it's just, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel like my priority is my day job. My
Hmm.
priority is not quilting or Prairie Quilt Co.
Hmm.
It is just a hobby for me. Like I don't see myself as, there's the buzzword quilterpreneur. Like I don't
Yeah.
see myself as a quilterpreneur
Hmm.
because I'm not actively seeking out business opportunities
Hmm.
and I'm not after all the growth that maybe other people are. I'm
Sure.
just creating. Like for
Yeah.
me, it's just I'm creating, I'm a creative person. This is my, really, it's still all about self-care for
Hmm.
me because teaching is a stressful job. And, you know,
Absolutely.
it was during COVID, it certainly still is now the
Yeah.
post-COVID years. It's still very much a stressful job. So for me, like this is my outlet,
Hmm.
this design process, creating. I love taking like photographs and sharing on Instagram and interacting with followers. Like that's all just for me, it's enjoyment. It's fun.
Mm.
It's not about business
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah. But I love that because I think you can have both. You can have, success, and success is defined by you. It's not anybody else's definition. It's not anybody else's vision. If you feel successful in what you're doing with both teaching and with your quilting, then that's all that matters. And if you feel good about what you're putting out and the balance that you have, then like no one else gets to tell you that you're not doing enough or that you should be doing something else because clearly things are working for you. So it's good. And
Yeah, yeah, it's just been really fun, just seeing where this whole journey has been taking me.
mhm,
Uh, yeah.
yeah. Well, and keeping your own balance, your own boundaries is important in business no matter how you're in it, whether it's a hobby kind of part-time, like you're saying for you, and self-care and more about that than, someone who's going at it full time. It's whatever you want to find from it. As long as you stay true to that, then your people will find you, the right opportunities will find you, and you'll be able to find success where you're at. I think not, there is hard work in it and there is sometimes focus has to shift and change, but I think you can have the life you want, you can have the balance you want as long as you stay true to your own beliefs and your own truth in the quilty space and in your home life and how it affects the people
Mhm.
around you. And so I think that's great that you've been able to find that for yourself and it's showing. I mean, everything you put out is so lovely and people love it. I've seen several versions of your quilts out there, people posting and just sharing your love of color and fun patterns, and so it's been really cool to see that emerge.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's one thing that I just have felt like I just is important to me is just to stay true to what I love. Like
Mhm,
I don't want to be trying to just copy somebody or
mhm,
or doing what, might be, what following like a certain trend or anything. I just feel like
mhm.
m- more and more it's just like, no, I'm just gonna just do what I want to do. People can
Yeah,
like it or not.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, if you get swept up in the trends or the popularity game that some people try to play, you lose yourself. It's like,
Yeah,
they're like, you'll
it's
wake up
very
one day and just,
easy.
yeah, it is. And, if you wake up and don't recognize yourself because you've been chasing someone else's vision, it's like really hard to come back from that. I think, at least for me, like I experienced it in teaching a few times, just like was chasing these certain things and it's, back to that idea that like, oh, I have to have a Pinterest worthy classroom. I have to have a, Instagram worthy classroom and I need to be doing all these trendy things. And I felt like the more I looked to that or looked for that, the less I was involved with what was really important in my classroom. I'm like, who cares if everything's cute and rainbowy if it lacks substance or if the kids aren't getting anything from it? And it can be the same in the quilting world if you're always chasing after the popular fabrics or designers of the time, which is fun and it's great. But like if you lose yourself in that, then it's like you kind of have to go back to square ones after that if you wake up from that and re-find yourself. But
Yeah.
like I think the more people that kind of lay back and go, you know what? I'm gonna refrain. I'm gonna stick to what I know and what I love. And
Mhm.
I think we just inspire each other to do that. And not that there's anything wrong with using new and trendy fabric because I mean, there's a lot of really cute and great stuff out there, but
There is.
like
Yeah. If only you had unlimited money, right? So you can buy
exactly,
buy all
exactly.
of it.
Yeah, like
And
feeling
unlimited time to, like, sew with all of it, because I feel like I have, like,
yeah,
a lot of fabric on my shelf already that I need to use
yes.
before
I
I go
know.
and add more to it.
Yeah, well, it's that feeling of FOMO. It's like, "Oh my gosh, look at all these people making all this stuff out of this new fabric. I need to go get some." And then I turn around 6 years later and I still have that fabric because I never touched it, and I'm like, "What am I doing?" You know?
Yeah.
It's hard to not get swept up in it and not get that FOMO feeling all the time of just like, "I'm not doing enough. I need to be sewing more and be using everybody's fabrics," and
Mhm.
but it's just impossible, and being okay with that, you know, is is it's good. You know, my mom and I same like just very recently we've been trying to like go through everything and we would just buy fabric to buy fabric and be like, "Oh, we can have it in our back stock in our inventory so we can offer it as like backings for people or whatever." But almost always for jobs, we have to go shop for something different because we don't have quite the right thing. And
Okay.
so we both were just like, we have to stop doing that. We have to stop buying fabric just to buy fabric or just because it's a good deal,
Yeah.
for the business.
I
But
used to always buy, like, if there would be a new line that came out that I loved, I would buy, like, the whole line, right? Like,
mhm,
all of it, and I've
mhm,
been trying to tell myself or to teach myself to go away from that, to rather just buy, maybe my favorite 2 or 3 prints from that
mhm.
line
Yeah.
and to add into my collection and not the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I just find I love sewing scrappy, but if you have, if I'm kind of at this point, I have my favorite color palette that I like
Mhm.
to use. So if I just keep buying prints from various places that fit into that palette that I love,
Yeah.
then I can just draw from, like, I keep my fabrics organized by color on my shelf. So I think, okay,
Mhm.
well, if I want to have yellows, then I'm going to pull from these fabrics. And if I want blues, I'll pull from these fabrics. And it's just a good way to like mix and match and use a
Yeah.
little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that because yeah, if you have your favorites and you have the what you know you like and what you're going to go like you're going to grab to use, it's like if you're going to build a collection or build a stock of fabrics, then like yeah, pick the stuff you know you're going to
Yeah.
use and it's okay if you don't buy the whole line of fabric and it's
You know,
okay if you just choose a few choice
one
pieces.
thing that just popped in my mind though too is
Mhm.
like I'll share like on my Instagram my fabric pull that I'm
Yeah.
using, and like maybe it's like a very like a scrappy pull. Like I do that a lot, and then
Yeah.
I'll get lots of people like commenting or messaging me like, where can I get a quilt kit for that? I'm like, well, you can't
Mhm.
because it's not just one collection, and it's fabrics I've collected from all over the place over years, and
Mhm.
like it's more of a practice that you need to
Right.
develop for your fabric shopping, right? So
Mhm.
you just need to understand like what is it that you love and
Yeah.
in what colors, and then yeah, just get into like the your or maybe change your fabric shopping habits, right? And like
Right.
then you can start developing that on your own, but it's not like if I make my my cover quilt in art gallery pure solids and like,
Mhm.
okay, well, yes, you can get this quilt kit and you can get the exact same thing. But
You're
yeah,
right.
if I'm sewing with, yeah, all these different random prints from my fabric shelves, like, no, that's not possible to create a kit. Although some fabric shops have been really nice and they've kind of curated like similar looking
Mm,
kits to
yeah.
kind of give the same feel for people.
Mhm.
So, but
Yeah. Which I think is great because, yeah, if you're pulling from your stash, some of those fabrics might be out of print and you can't get them. And so
oh,
it's
exactly.
kind of like, well, sorry, you're out of luck unless you already have it in your hands or you're willing to spend $1 million to buy it from someone who has some. Like, yeah, but I love when shops are willing to work with designers to curate bundles because I think some people resonate with the cover quilt or with, a designer's fabric pull and maybe color choice or fabric choices is hard for them. And so having that option is really great. And so that's cool that shops have been able to kind
Yeah.
of pull similar things to help people out.
Yeah, and I feel like the people who work at fabric shops, they love helping.
Hmm.
Like if you go in with like a photograph of what, you would like they can help you find
Yeah.
something that's similar or close. Like I know, yeah,
Yeah.
I've done that lots of times too.
Yep.
Where I've just gone in, it's like, oh, this is kind of what I want, but I don't really know what to pick. And
Yep. Yeah.
yeah.
I used to just walk in and be like, here's the quilt I'm making. Here's the color inspiration. Help me. And then, someone would come along and we'd walk around and pick things. And now I'm like, I feel confident to do that myself because I've done it so many times. I think it
Mm.
also just takes that practice, but also it's tricky when you're making things for other people because you're kind of stuck to what they want and you can't just be like, "Oh, this would be great. This would be this fabric would be awesome." And it's like you might send choices that you love and they'll come back with, that's not quite right." And I'm like, "Oh, but it's perfect."
Yeah. I don't think I could sew quilts for other people.
It's
I think that would bother me too much.
yeah, it's honestly been so fun and a lot of people are really trusting and just like, "Here's my inspiration. I trust whatever you come up with." And you're like, "Okay." And then there's other people who are like, "I want these exact fabrics," or you pick a million and they're like not happy with anything and they'll settle and then they're mad and you're like, "Please stop. Please be nice to me." And but yeah, like for personal shopping, it's like the more you go and pick what you like and focus not on what you think the quilt should look like based on what other people are going to think about it, but what will make you happy. Like that's the most important thing I think is instead of chasing this like Instagram model version of a quilt, like what do you like? What's going to make you happy? What's going to resonate for you or the person maybe you're gifting it, what is their likes? What do they love? And I
Yeah,
think that's telling too is like when you're gifting quilts is like the fabric choices you make with someone in mind. It's like a way you can show them this is how I see you. And that can be really special too. But yeah, that staying true to yourself, I think, no matter what you're doing is so important and it's so easy to forget,
yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm in love with all your stuff. I wish I had all the time in the world to make every single thing you make because they're just beautiful. And I can't wait for people to get their hands on your new quilt. And so we'll definitely have links to everything down in the show notes. But to people who are new to you, where can they find you online?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm on Instagram at Prairie Quilt Co. And I have a website, www.prairiequiltco.com.
Perfect. Yeah. And like I said, we'll link those in the show notes so people can get to you really easily.
Mm.
And hopefully everybody will go grab their free copy of Starry Night while they're
Yeah,
purchasing other patterns. And been so great to talk to you and get to know you. And, us Amandas have to band together and protect our name. And,
absolutely.
and yeah, it's fun to always meet like teacher quilters because I think it's very telling of like the way our brains work, which is super fun. But
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, well,
Well,
yeah,
thank you
thank
for having me.
yeah, of course. This has been great. And I can't wait to see all your next patterns coming out in 2024 and what
Yeah,
you've got
I
going on.
know.
So
Yeah, I got a few ideas already in my brain, so I'll have to see how they roll out throughout the year.
awesome. Well, thanks again, and we'll chat again soon.
Yeah, yeah, thanks.